um, our Alternative Law Career Roundtable. And I'm very pleased to have all of my pertinent colleagues here who are also passionate about the topic. And they're all going to be speaking in their respective turns. And hopefully by the end of this discussion, we're going to come up with some way forward. It's not the last of this kind of event that we'll have, because we really want to open up the discussion on this topic because we can see the struggles of a lot of law students in getting into the profession, and of course, the whole issue of the exams and passing and failing. And so we want to open up the discussion that where they'll be included, and they'll have other parts to explore, and we want to normalize those other parts that don't require admission, or as my overseas colleagues would say, calling to the bar. Okay, so I'm going to introduce our moderator for the evening. It's going to be Sheila Tefo. Sheila is a content creator, local content creator with a YouTube channel, and she does a lot of exam-related content, giving classes for the board examinations, and she is very popular, and I hope to be taking tips from her as I build my own YouTube channel. And we were supposed to have a colleague from Botswana, but she also got called away because of a family emergency. But Sheila and I are going to be directing the discussions tonight, and hopefully things will go smoothly. So in terms of the agenda, right, we're going to have various, we're going to have our panelists talking on their allotted topics for roughly around 10 minutes. And of course, the objective for the session, like I said, is to expose the problem, expose what I call the underbelly or part of the underbelly of our profession. And it's one thing that I learned very quickly, and is the reason why I have international colleagues here, is that it's a global problem. Okay, I saw some posts from Pragy and some other members of the profession overseas that just lament the same issue. So instead of addressing it on a local parochial front, I always want to talk about it on a macro scale, so we can answer it as widely as possible, right? So the objective is to open up the discussion about alternative careers and normalize careers that do not require calling to the bar or admission, because that is becoming a barrier. The exams are proving to be a barrier to entry. And that one track or tunnel vision kind of path is not working for the majority of our law graduates. And of course, a lot of us deal with them on the back end, and we note the discouragement, the disillusionment, and of course, did I study law for the right reasons, or have I even studied the right degree? So we want to also take care of their mental health in giving them options, and hopefully we can at least start to achieve that, go a little bit towards achieving that tonight. So I'm going to ask our panelists to introduce themselves and give a brief introduction, and then we'll start with my introductory address. So we'll let the ladies go first. So Karen.
Sorry, I'm just figuring out how to unmute myself. Good evening, everybody. It's nice to meet the panelists I haven't met before. Nice to meet you all. Hope you're all a little warmer than I am here in Gordons Bay. So I'm an attorney and a mediator. I am currently in the Western Cape. I used to practice in KZN. I'm a specialist in family law, and I started my law career at the ripe young age of 40, so had a lot of experience in other areas prior to becoming an attorney, so I have quite a different perspective, I think, to a lot of people having come in at a red wine phase of my life. So I look forward to tonight's discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. Pam?
Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Lisa, for inviting me to this. So I'm also the owner of a legal virtual assistant business. And I was a budding legal student that I didn't pursue the traditional path. Still being in the legal industry.
Pam, your connection is a bit spotty. Maybe you want to just switch off your video just to give yourself more space on the bandwidth. We can hear you, but your video is spotty.
Okay, I'm not sure how much. Is it better?
Yeah, you can talk now.
Yes. So I don't know how much of it you lost, but what I did say is that I am a paralegal and also the owner of a legal virtual assistant business. And I am an example of someone that pursued an alternative career path in legal. Having wanted to become a lawyer and subsequently changing my mind. And I'm grateful that I did, because everyone battles with that billable hour. We all know that wonderful thing. But now I have the best of both worlds because I have the flexibility of running my own business, as well as looking forward to the discussions we're having this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Pam. And my sister and namesake, Lisa.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Lisa, so much for having me on your panel. For me, it's about 9 o'clock in the morning. I'm in Los Angeles, California, in the States over here. I'm thrilled to be here and honored. Consider you a dear friend and colleague, Lisa. I am a personal injury attorney. I've been practicing for 20 years here in California. I have a law practice with my husband here. He practices family law and estate planning, and I do the personal injury side. I'm also a law professor here at an ABA, at ABA schools. I own a law school preparation company where I partner with law schools nationwide to teach students how to thrive in law school. And then I offer individual programming to individual students here in the States as well, recorded and live courses that are based on my real true passion here is qualitative research to understand the lived experience of successful law students, what they do to achieve their goals from day one of the semester to the final exam. So I published a book on the qualitative data, and that is the basis of all of my courses. So instead of saying, here's what I did when I was in law school, I like to understand, a more global, comprehensive perspective, weed out the redundancies, and then show students how to customize that study system to their own preferences. So I was a deputy city attorney. I've practiced municipal law for a couple years for 5 cities. I love the law. I'm a total alternative law junkie. I love doing everything. I love practicing and everything else, having my hands in just about everything else. But I also understand kind of the underbelly you're talking about, Lise. And I'm excited to share this conversation with all of these other fantastic panelists.
Super. Pragy?
Sure. I'm audible?
Yes, you are.
Perfect. First of all, thank you, Deja, for having me. It's been wonderful sharing the panel here with you guys. So I'm a practicing lawyer. I have over 5 years of experience. I'm practicing in corporate law and IP. That's my major. And I have have been associated with various global organizations, and it's been about a year that I have opened my own company wherein we teach practical skill sets to various law graduates, considering they don't have that requisite experience during the law school. So that's what we provide. And apart from that, I also practice in litigation, civil disputes, and commercial disputes. So that's been my major, and it's been wonderful here with you all. Looking forward to the online discussion.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And my good colleague Eugene.
Good afternoon, everybody. It's just after 6 in South Africa and the Western Cape. Welcome to the international people also joining. It's nice to hear your views on this. Like I said, my name is Eugene Opperman. I'm an attorney. I've been practicing law for the past 24 years, and I'm also a mediator. Apart from that, I'm also one of the examiners of the board exams that they have to write in South Africa. I can give you some experience, some lived experience of what I encounter by the students or the candidates in this type of field. I just have to have a caveat on that I do not at this stage represent the LPC. I don't have a mandate for them, but I can surely, from my experience as one of the examiners of the board exams, give you some insight of my experience and how I perceive the problems and then how to address the problems. Thank you, Lisa.
Nice. So we've got, I don't think there's a lot of diversity in the room, to be honest. I think there's some family lawyers and people that just love the alternative side of things, which is why obviously you are here. So I'm glad that we are all, despite our time differences, we're all together. So I'm going to kick things off and the road to the admission dilemma. Okay. So like I alluded to in the introduction, I face a lot of the back end of things with disillusionment and complaining and did I study law? Was it the right degree? Did I make the sacrifices for nothing? And of course, we have this whole issue about our board exams, or as our international colleagues will call it, the bar exam, where it's hard to pass, right? And the reality is that a lot of our candidate attorneys, our interns, they work very hard. So that's one thing I have to validate right off the bat is that, and with resources like Sheila's classes and a host of others offering revision classes and supplementary notes and, just so many extra aids, they do not fail to make use of all of that and to come to the exam. And of course, it's a whole other story. And, we've had some incidents in the last couple of years where it's like, to me, it looks like a bit of a psychological operation meant to throw them off. And so they end up doing not as well as they had hoped. And of course, their marks are not a reflection of the effort that they put in. So that for me, it became a noticeable pain point here. And of course, my drive is to create, to innovate and to say, how can we create solutions? How can we at least start having the conversation? Because we have to. I think if for any reason I want to help these juniors because their mental health is suffering. I mean, to come from 4 years of a law degree here in South Africa and then to just plunge themselves into practical vocational training. A lot of them do the board exam classes at night, and I've personally seen young people age in months in terms of the load that they carry. And so they have a lot of expectation and a lot riding on those exams because they make a lot of sacrifices. And then to see the outcome and, of course, just to realize how much of it is their fault and how much of it is not their fault or lies with the system. So I never want to sugarcoat things. So that is the problem that we are facing. And of course, the failure rates are very high. Some provinces don't have a pass rate at all. Um, and it's just a shame that they don't make as much of a hoo-ha about the board exam pass rate as they do about the grade 12 pass rate, the final school exam results, right? That's more often seems to be more important than our professional qualifications. So of course there needs to be some kind of, I guess, standardization, or it has to be made prominent. And so where we can address the disparities in the different provinces with the failure rates, and of course some provinces the pass rate doesn't even exist, and that breaks my heart. To know again how much effort they put in, and how much of us are out there helping them. I mean, I started my academy part of it partly as an answer to this failure issue about why are they failing. Maybe I can help them understand. And so, not even having any teaching experience, I guess it's just in my genes. So my parents who were in education in different spheres. So I just started my classes to help them prepare for the board exams, which meant I had to look at the curriculum. Myself not being an attorney, I'm a barrister. I had the pupillage, so it was a baptism for me to go into the attorneys, the manuals that they use, and sort of try and summarize it and see how can I help them understand. So that was like the early sort of answer that I was giving to, okay, the pass rate's not that grand. What are we going to do about it? And then, of course, later on, or years later, I've started to see how a certain paper, okay, here we have 4 papers. So it's a certain paper that stumps everybody, and it's that one paper that holds them back from their admission. And then they tend to stall and they don't know what to do. They in no man's land, they're in the twilight zone, and that's usually when they come to me and they ask me, I don't know what to do, you know, help me. Did I study in vain? Did I do this for nothing? Tell me I didn't do this for nothing. And so, of course, my heart breaks again. So that for me is the dilemma, or the heart of the dilemma is the exams are not helping them, or the system is not helping them get into the profession. And a lot of them, I dare say, have noble dreams to be a lawyer, noble reasons for wanting to be a lawyer, and it's just frustrating and it's not materializing. And of course, they are maybe gaslighting themselves, being gaslit by the system, by other colleagues in the system. Maybe you're not working hard enough. Maybe you just imagined it. Maybe it wasn't that hard. And so it doesn't bode well for the future of the profession if we're going to have this kind of, I call it gatekeeping, but it's like we're not getting influx. We're not getting enough fresh water coming into the profession. And now it's becoming like the Dead Sea, where there's no outflow. It's just stagnant. And we've got certain group that's populating it and keeping it going, but we're not getting new blood coming in, and it's just there's no circulation in our South African legal profession, and I'm sure as we'll hear from the other countries as well. So that's setting the South African perspective, at least from the perspective of the candidates and the ones that are looking to enter the profession. Um, and of course, based on all of the stories that I hear and the people that I end up helping them, mentoring them even to get their minds back on track. So that's my introduction. And of course, I think it would be a nice lead on now, I think, for Eugene to give the examiner's perspective
Yes,
what the situation looks like. So take it away.
thank you, Lisa. Yes, just to start off with, yes, there might be some structural problems. They've subsequently changed the system. Now, previously, how it worked was that, what the candidates write the exam, exams, and then the exam papers are given to examiners. Now, those examiners are all legal professionals, they're all attorneys, so that gets dispersed between all those attorneys, and then they have to mark it, and they have a memorandum on which they have to adjudicate, and they have to decide how to mark it, but it's very subjective. And then the papers needs to be obviously graded and marked, and then it comes to some of the senior um, examiners for moderation. Now, I've seen moderations where I increased marks of 8%, 9%, 12%. Now, that would
Mhm.
definitely mean the difference between a pass rate and a definite fail. So if I had to moderate that. So having said that, that was previously, that was the system, and there was a lot of recommendations that was made, and subsequently they changed it to have a centralized marking office in the Gauteng province, where all the examiners sit in a boardroom and they
Mhm.
mark the scripts, and then it gets moderated there immediately. So if there's a question from from one of the examiners, how do I interpret this? Or how do I judge this? Do I give a mark? Do I don't give a mark? Um, that problem will be alleviated to a
Mhm.
large degree. But still, there is a subjective sense of marking and being discretionary in giving marks. And the aim is not to mark specifically with regards to the memorandum, but to gauge the competency of the attorneys. Now, I've moderated and I've marked so many scripts. And I mean, one of the biggest problems is number one, the handwriting of the attorneys. You would think that doctors write illegible, ish, but it's just like it's terrible. So trying to figure out what are they trying to say, and I would allocate marks even if I know that the candidate has the sense of knowing what's going on. But
Mhm.
that's a subjective thing, and I think with a new structure and with a centralized marking area, that might alleviate the problem. That might actually help a lot. Um, then I also do the oral exams. Now for our international counterparts, if you have up to a certain percentage, which is 40% pass rate, up until 40%, and you between 40 and 50, which is the pass rate, then you would be eligible to go for an oral exam. Now, people are
Mhm.
scared of the oral exams. I think the oral exams are easier because you can only ask so much things. Now, previously, most of the candidates relied solely on previous papers, previous memorandums, and previous question papers. Now, that has subsequently changed, and the structure that they bring in now is to gauge the competency, to make it more practice based. It's practical because yes, it is, but in one sense, what might be practical for Sheila or for Pragy or for Pam even might not be for us. So that's also a very subjective thing. So they created a panel now where a group of attorneys in practice sit and then they draft the necessary paper, and that gets then obviously drafted, and then only it comes to us as the examiners. Now, if I look, the two papers that most of the candidates in South Africa have a problem with. The one paper
Mhm.
is the one about court proceedings. Now, that forms the basis of your legal practice. That is the bare minimum of how to practice law. Something a simple thing like and that's one of the first questions. If anyone listening or the audience members listen, that would be probably the first question that I would ask in a paper one. Is what is the difference between an action and a motion proceeding? And I kid you not that 95% of the candidates do not know what is the difference between bringing an application to court and instituting a summons. They don't know. They don't know that basics. So there's a lack of basic understanding. Um, that on the one side, and then the paper three is obviously the biggest conundrum, the biggest elephant in the room, and that is the ethics paper. Now, that obviously we all know that law is an ethical, or supposedly an ethical profession, and the candidates lack the general understanding, the comprehension of what is meant by ethics. When are you allowed to withdraw as an attorney? When are you allowed to transfer monies from your trust account to your business account? Those basic things are not met. So there's no comprehension of that. And I ascribe that mostly to, number one, where they do their articles. And inevitably, the the problem that I see as an examiner is that your big legal firms, they work on a rotation basis. And you know what? Those candidates do not get the necessary experience. They do not know how to go out and to issue a summons. I would ask them, you know what, where do you get the return of service to indicate that the documents were served? And they would say, no, they get it in the file. So I said, okay, right, so how does it come in the file? How does it get there? They would say, no, you know what, one of their couriers place it in the file. They don't know the basics. And that's a problem, you know, how to debit fees, how to, you know, for billable hours. How do you do that? And they would answer me something like, they press the buttons on the computer, but they don't know what's going on in the back office. And that's the biggest problem. I see as an examiner, I see a lot of candidates which I pass with a smile are those that are the small legal firms where they are hands-on, not the bigger law firms. It's not the big law firms. And that seems to be problematic. On the other side, there's also the problem that once let me just backtrack and just circle back to that. Now, during the oral exams, which I did probably about a couple of weeks back for the last exam, about 98% of the candidates have already completed their articles. Now, that's problematic because now we look at the LPCs being gatekeepers because there's one exam, and it's most of the time it's the paper 3, where people have tried to complete it for 3 or 4 or 5, even 5 times. And then they come with an oral and they are being tested on competency and ethics. And then you ask them the question, you know what, how far are you with your articles? And they would say, you know what, I already finished a year back. But the paper 3, the ethic paper is still standing in their way. Now, like Lisa rightly said, you know what, those people are in the twilight zone. They're not allowed to practice. They do not have the right of appearance. And my suggestion there would be for groups like Lisa's group and the other candidate attorney groups to lobby that with not the LPC, because they're just the enforcers thereof. They're just the people that check that everything is done. It should be addressed to the LSSA, the Law Society of South Africa, which in effect represents us as attorneys and candidate attorneys, to lobby to them, to ask them to extend that, to give condemnation. So if you are still in a law firm after your articles has expired, that you would be allowed to practice as an attorney, because otherwise you would mean nothing to that attorney. You are basically then just a normal clerk, or you would be a runner in the firm, or you would be a paralegal. But you're not allowed to bill fees, for example, because you're not allowed to practice. You're not allowed to go to court. So what incentive is there really then for the attorneys to keep them on? Really not much. And it's those people that fall on the wayside. You know what, they just say, they simply just give up. They just say, you know what, I had enough. I can't do this anymore. I'll do my paper 3 when I get there eventually. But up until that stage, they're in limbo. They don't do that. And not many of them return back to the profession after they've actually passed the paper 3, specifically the ethics one. And that is really, really, really concerning. And that needs to be addressed. To lobby that to the LSSA, even to Parliament, to say, you know what, look after us as candidate attorneys. Give us the opportunity to further our education while continuing with that. Because remember now, once they brought down the article period from 2 years to 1 year, they only have a span of 1 year to complete their exams, to be admitted and to be employed by that legal firm. But if you do not pass it the first time, what are the chances that you're going to pass it the second or the third time? What are you going to do up until then? And it's then that the candidates have to look at different alternatives, like going for a course in mediation, doing a course in arbitration, saying, you know what, stuff the law, I'm going into compliance. I'll work for a big company, corporate company, and I'll do legal compliance, or I'll become a company secretary. And we're losing valuable, very knowledgeable candidates. Because not, remember now, being tested on a test, in an exam, some people don't taste very well. And that's just a fact of life. But the education part thereof and the background, how to prepare for that. I see a lot of the candidates, and I engage in a conversation with them to make them feel at ease. And then they would say, you know what, they only have had the day before they've written the exams, they had a day's leave, which is totally ridiculous, because you cannot do that mass of work in one day. And the firms won't give them study leave unless it's unpaid study leave. And that's also totally wrong. And that's also something that from the candidate attorney side, they could lobby through the LSSA and through Parliament and through all these institutions and forums to have their voice heard, to say that, you know what, we are struggling, help us. The varsities, the universities, they need to tell the people before they study law, this is the path. They're not being told that. My own daughter told me that. She said, you know what, Dad, I studied law, but no one told me that I had to do 2 years of article, that I had to write 4 exams. She was never told that. Not in the preschool. Well, she knew, obviously, because I'm a dad and I'm an attorney. But most of the candidates, they have this idea of LA law, and they've got this suits idea in their heads. And it doesn't materialize. It doesn't work that way in real life. Yes, I'll jump in with other discussions later on, but that's basically just from my side. Thanks, Lisa.
Thanks, Eugene.
Thank you so
LA
much.
law. LA law leads.
I'm giving away my age. Sorry.
Lisa is in LA, so it's LA law.
Yes.
No
Thank
offense.
you so
I
much
hear
for
you.
that. Thank you so much for that, Eugene. I think a lot of candidate attorneys need to hear such things, especially from the examiner's perspective. Just knowing what the examiners think about them writing the exams and where they need to improve will really, really help them. So thank you so much for that. And then now, Lisa, you're going to be speaking on the American perspective of things. And in doing so, I just want you to touch on the lessons that you think that we as South Africans can take from the practices and strategies from the USA to somewhat make things better on our end.
Thank you, Sheila. In a lot of ways, I think the U.S. can take some strategies from you. And what we're really lacking, a lot of what Eugene said is also happening in the States. It's no different, quite honestly, in a lot of ways. I think about it kind of in a couple of ways. Does law school prepare you to take the bar exam? We call it the bar exam. And then does law school prepare you to practice? And to the first question, to take the bar exam somewhat, because, we all have to take, in all of the ABA accredited law schools, we have to take certain core classes that we will be tested on, that our students, applicants are tested on the bar exam. And so really what it becomes is, are you good at memorizing? Are you good at taking vast amounts of information, synthesizing out the rules, and are you good at then chunking it in a way that your brain can recall it when you know you're being tested on one of the 14 subjects, right? And so if that's a skill that you have always possessed, great. If you've learned that skill along the way in your 3 or 4 years in law school, fantastic. But really, the practice, as we all know, is not so much about memorization. A lot of the things that are important is also, like Eugene mentioned, being ethical, understanding how to run your own practice, understanding when you go to court what the etiquette is. How do I actually just walk into court, and what are the steps when I walk in and I have to go to the clerk before I get to the bench? What do I need to do? Those things are very lacking in the States as well. So there's this really big push for us because this topic has come up a lot. And law schools have petitioned We have, it's called the National Conference of Bar Examiners. They draft portions of each state's bar exam. Each state here can create their own bar exam, but most of them have shifted to what's called a uniform bar exam. And because of this disconnect between practice and what we're teaching, we're coming up with something called the Next Gen Bar Exam. It's to be released in the next couple of years. And so far, about 25 of our 50 states have opted in to have their students take it. But it still has a component of memorization, but they're feeding into this topic of we're not preparing practice-ready lawyers. So they have a practice, they're going to give them an example or some skills like Eugene mentioned of how to draft a memo. There's going to be legal writing components, stuff that we do as lawyers, draft a law in motion or opposition or a brief or appellate brief or a response or a client letter or a deposition, line of questioning or direct questioning, opening statement, those types of things, which is great. But the problem is we're not teaching law schools how to teach those skills. And most of our law professors are not practicing lawyers. They haven't practiced maybe for a couple of years and decided this isn't for me. So I'm going to go see if I can help students. And the problem then becomes with that. Most of these law professors went to Ivy League schools, which, less than 4 or 5% of our students go to. So they have a very specific way of learning and getting these big law jobs that less than 2% of our applicants are going to get. So, you can kind of see we have that going on. And so there's this competition. Here's what I think needs to happen. So I was failing out of law school my second semester. So I was one of these people that I was spinning my wheels and I was trying really hard. I went from kindergarten to law school and, I was failing out. And so I really had to dig deep. I intentionally decided that this was what I wanted. And we don't give students that option today. We just continue mounting all these pressures. We don't teach them about how to be a failure. It's okay to fail. We do not talk about that in law school. I post a lot on LinkedIn. I post every day. And one of them was, have you ever gone to a presentation at your law school with all the pizza and all the things that, drive students to come to these workshops on how to fail effectively and how to learn from the failure and how to see a failure as you being on the precipice of greatness? No, we don't do that. Another thing that we don't do is we really do train lawyers for these big law firms that a lot of them aren't going to go to. So we don't tell them, we need to start out by saying, listen, where do you want to live? Where do you want to live? Okay, what type of law do you want to practice? What are your options in that area? What are some lawyers we can connect you to who do that in that area so you can start those networking, start that training? How many times have you been to court? When have you gone to court? Have you actually seen a family law, a criminal trial, a civil trial, a court of court of appeals, a Supreme Court? Have you done any of those things? We don't do that. So, and one of the biggest things that I really focus on in my programs too is defeating the imposter, because our students, all of these things combine to create this really unique atmosphere of pressure, stress, depression, anxiety, suicide. All of these things are very rampant in U.S. law schools and students because of the lack of, admitting that it's hard. It's almost like it's going to be hard, and then you're not going to pass the bar. Likely, like 50% of you are going to pass the bar, and then you're probably not going to get a good job, and then the job that you get probably won't pay your law school loans. Because, you've paid, $200,000 to go to law school for 3 years. So all these things combine to create a situation where you're competing with others and you start feeling, I'm not good enough. Oh my gosh, they're doing all these things. They're getting all of these jobs. They're getting all these opportunities, but no one wants to talk about that. So I have made, in overcoming, getting off of my academic probation, graduating with honors, passing the bar the first attempt, and really wanted to, my whole career has been on, it's an intentional decision to put ourselves through this. So we know that. What can we do instead of looking back and saying, oh my gosh, this was horrible? How can I find a way to make my own signature here? Like, it's not bad. You can always premise everything in gratitude and positivity and in ways to find your own way. This is all our history book. We made the decision to go to law school. What can we do about that? If we fail out, if we decide to withdraw, like how can we then still make our life great? And here, the non-traditional paths, the fact that you get a JD without even passing the bar here is looked upon very highly, even if you're not practicing, because it shows a couple of things. It shows that you can complete difficult tasks all the way to the end. You take them to the natural conclusion. You are very adept at multitasking, right? And so all of these things, like they say, a potential player sees a JD on your resume, and you're going to go to the top of the list. That's just the way it is here. You're going to get probably higher pay. So there are benefits, and you don't have to go into corporate. I mean, you don't have to go into corporate world. You can do something that, like, this maybe was what we need to teach law students. What do you love to do? What are you good about? What are you good at? What are you passionate about? How can we use the law to focus on those natural talents? And so that's kind of my whole thing, my whole spiel. It's intentional decision to be here. Let's not, I don't look at it as like, oh my gosh, this is horrible. I look at it as, what can I do about it? That's me.
Thank you so much for that, Lisa. Yeah, thank you so much for that. I love that you touched on passion and what, the students are really passionate about and how to marry that with the law. Because a whole lot of us think it's just a one-way stream. You put your passions aside and you follow the law. That's just it. So, sorry. So I really love that you touched on passion. A lot of students have no idea that you can marry the two. All they're thinking is traditional roles, and that's all that is. And I also see it when it comes to law graduates applying for jobs. It's very rare to find graduates applying for, RES qualifications to, go into compliance and all the other streams. Everybody just wants to do articles. Everybody just wants to do pupillage. And that is such a narrow way of looking at, what the law can unlock in terms of our careers. So thank you so much for that. So now we'll move on to Pragy, who will give us the Indian perspective. And while you do that, I'd like you to touch on the roles that technology plays in shaping the future of legal education and training, because I know that you are in legal technology as well. So I just want you to touch on that as you give us the Indian perspective.
Sure. Thank you, Sheila. Thank you for that. So, starting from the India's perspective, so our journey starts right after we graduate from high school. So, here the law is 5 years. So, 5 years is a really long time period. So, the first initial problem that we face is that we don't have any guidance to the students who graduate just from high school. They are not aware of what all career perspectives they have after law. Now, the only thing they know is that once you do law, you go to courts, you appear before judges, you present your case, that's it. But law is very diversified nowadays. India being the fastest growing economy, they have their own challenges, but they provide a lot of opportunities as well. But those students, they are not even aware what are the opportunities aside from litigation there is. So that's the first issue. There is no guidance as to why exactly are you joining law, what do you want to do after you graduate, after you have spent 5 years. And once they are done with their law degree, once they have spent their 5 years into the law, it's really hard for them to make a switch afterwards if they feel like, no, this is not something which I wanted to do initially. And that's the first drawback. And afterwards, another drawback that we have is again what Lisa and Eugene have already stated. We don't have that much practical guidance during our law school. Initial practice is completely different from theoretical aspect what we are being taught here in law. So here in course curriculum, in the 5 year course curriculum in India, what the course curriculum that was there back in 90s, it's still the same. So there hasn't been much upgradation. So that's the another major challenge that we are facing right now. So once law students graduate, they are not even aware like, now okay, now I have graduated, now what? Now, do I go to court? Now, do I go to corporate sector? Do I practice intellectual property, private equity, mergers acquisition? There are a lot of options, but they are not even aware about those terms, let alone getting a job in that field. So that's the major issue that we are facing right now is the difference between practical aspects and the theoretical knowledge. I receive hundreds of DMs on a daily basis on LinkedIn asking me to get them a job. When I asked a simple question that do you know a difference between pre-execution and post-execution, they are not even aware of that, let alone get a job in corporate world. So there are a lot of challenges. Another set of challenge that we face is that here in India we have a bar after we pass that is known as All India Bar Examination. So all the 29 states in India, they have their one irrespective exam. And to make the life easier for law students, we have made it open book examination. So we have 28 subjects that we have here in Indian law, and that's an open book examination. And even after having an open book examination, you just have to open a bare act, you have to search for the section, and it's a multiple choice question. So you have to take the right choice. Even then, 49% of the Indian law graduates fail the All India Bar examination. So you can gather that there is a huge difference between the practical aspects and the theoretical knowledge. Even during the theoretical knowledge, they are not being taught how to read their acts, let alone prepare their case before a judge. So if they're not being taught how to read a bare acts, they can hardly prepare a case before the judge. And that is another issue simultaneously why people are not able to clear the interviews. As I said, India is the fastest growing economy, so there is no ample of opportunities. There's nothing shortage of opportunities. There's nothing like that in India. The only reason is the lack of skill set. Here, people feel that the demand is more than the supply, but that's not the case. Demand is there. The only difference is that jobs are there. The only underlying difference is that people do not have the requisite skill set. Especially if I talk about in corporate world, I have spent over 5 years in corporate world. Here, nobody has that time period to teach you anything, let alone they start from scratch. And if you are coming as a law graduate fresher, they have to teach you, they have to start from scratch. So that's why they prefer someone with experience so that they have a little bit of knowledge. And another underlying problem is that to start somewhere, you need to have that experience. If you need to have that experience, you have to start somewhere. And you're not getting that opportunity to start somewhere. That's the major issue that we are facing right now in India. Aside from that, if I talk about during the law school journey, so here, as Lisa said, that in America or in the States, majority of the professors are from Ivy League colleges. That's not the scenario here. Here, the scenario is very different. The rules are not that stringent. So once you have taken admission to law, your law professors are they are the one who have never experienced the practical side of the law. They have never been to courts. They have never been in the company. They are completely restrictive to the theoretical aspect there in the law school. So they are only going to teach you the theoretical aspects, and that's the underlying difference where the gap arises. And once they graduate, they aren't prepared for anything. They keep reaching out to people on LinkedIn. They keep trying to find out whether they want to go for law firm, whether they want to go for litigation, or whether they want to go for corporate. Whatever it is, they keep on reaching out. Another recent update that I would like to share. So what happens here in India, litigation. So fresh law graduates, they weren't being paid anything. And especially if you are coming from a small city and you are relocating to a metro city, or like I am based out of capital Delhi. So if you are relocating to the capital city, expenses are going to be humongous, and you can't just keep on surviving on family's money, so you need something. But fresh law graduates weren't paid anything. So here in Supreme Court of India, it has directed the Bar Council of India to mandate a basic stipend. So that's another update. We are working, we are progressing towards it, but still, it's a really long way to go here in India. Similar to that of South Africa and United States and other jurisdiction, I believe.
Thank you for that. Thank you so much, Pragy. I like the fact that you touched on the fact that the old curriculum is still being used today. And we can see with that, it poses a problem because the world is not what it was 20 years ago. So much change has happened, yet the law is still behind. So that is a big issue. And I think it's something that we are, something that we are struggling with as well. Our acts are also old in South Africa, and there are some things that, could be improved upon because of, now we've got the use of AI, we've got new technology, things are evolving, and we need the law to evolve as well. And when you touched on the salaries, of fresh graduates, the same issue is still prevalent in South Africa. We've got candidate attorneys who earn so little, and it's so discouraging when you are trying to study for exams and you're trying to work, you're trying to juggle everything, and then to add to that, you have financial burdens. We've got people who are, doing pupillage, training to be advocates, and they are not getting a stipend at all. So that is very discouraging. It's something that needs to be looked at. It's very unfair that people have to work, graduates have to work for free, even with degrees. So thank you so much for that, Pragy.
Yeah,
And then now we've
one
got
of
Pam, who's going to be talking about soft skills for law graduates. And Pam, the question that I have for you is, what do you think about networking as a soft skill? Would you say that networking is the bridge that could potentially connect law graduates to their potential employers? Like, what do you think about networking as a skill? As you discuss soft skills for law students, I'd like you to touch a little bit on networking and how that can affect one's career.
Thank you, Sheila. This discussion so far, it seems as though we are all singing from the same hymn sheet, which is so comforting in a weird way. I personally feel that the legal degree needs to be shaken up. That entire curriculum has to be just changed. I think it's a time for radical change, especially when we talk about, like Pragy mentioned, you know, there's a lack of experience and opportunities, and um, you know, just on my personal journey, coming fresh out of university, people are asking for 2 to 3 years experience. But where do I get that if nobody's giving me the opportunity, right? So, yeah, very frustrating for youngsters. And I think it's going to be a point that I'm talking about just now. Some of our Gen Y, millennials, whatever they call themselves nowadays, um, are not very resilient as some of us. If we remember LA Law, we certainly, showing our ages here. So, okay. So the first thing I want to talk about is, which Eugene, while you were talking, um, just struck out for me where you said deciphering the handwriting, of the answers during marking. And that's communication. So I'm finding that the one skill, the soft skill that's lacking with our students and graduates is the ability to clearly convey information and clearly and effectively, verbally and in writing. If I have to share some of the job applications I get via email, it's truly scary. It ranges from a blank email with the CV attached to "Hi Padayachee, please see attached." Uh, so, while it can be very entertaining, my heart bleeds for them because I just wish that part of the LLB um, curriculum taught them how to write professional emails. One of the things that I train on when I do induction for candidate attorneys is email etiquette, because that's just lacking so badly. The second soft skill I want to talk about is teamwork. And I think as a student and a graduate, you only get to work together as a team if you've got coursework that demands that you do that. But I think it can be said for humans in general now. Everybody wants to operate in a silo, not share knowledge, not share experience, etc. And so the ability to work as a team player and, not um, throw your colleagues under the bus, basically, or your fellow students. That's very important. We're all fighting battles, and so it's important to have that kind of skill. The next one is really tricky, is problem solving. So Often in law firms, you'll get a director that will probably say to them, don't come to me with problems, come with solutions. And, you know, these kids, shame, I really feel for them. They like, I remember during one induction, when we finished, the one CA said to me, "But Pam, they don't teach us this at law school. Why are we learning this now? Like when we're at the door of the law firm, now you're saying type like this, space like that. Why aren't we doing that?" And then when it comes to problem solving, they always get told, or most often than not, um, try and find the solution first before coming to ask questions. And then on the other hand, you tell them no question is a stupid question, so come and ask. So that's a tough one, right? Because on the one hand, they're trying to say, okay, I'm going to go and Google, but I'll spend 30 minutes going down a rabbit hole, as opposed to, just going to another associate and asking the question. So the same thing with law students, right? Or any student for that matter, problem solving, even when it comes to just researching, um, they they aren't great at it. And I was gonna bring up
I think we lost Pam.
Yeah, we
Is she
did.
still on?
And I think she's probably on her way back in. Yeah, Peggy, you were starting to say something, and we went to the next speaker. You want to carry on with that?
Sure, sure. So the last thing I wanted to add, that judiciary being one of the pillar of the Indian democracy, being one of the three pillars. So it's really important that we, as a whole legal fraternity, we move ahead. If as a country we want to progress, because we have backlog of cases of more than 40 million cases backlog we have here in India. So again, this is a common reason that justice delayed, justice denied, and here the people are being denied justice. That's one of the reason is because lawyers, fresh law graduates, they aren't even aware of the practical aspect, so they are not able to present their case properly before the judge. So that's another major challenge that we are facing. I'm not sure about the other jurisdictions, but this is major challenge that we are facing right now in India as well.
Sorry about
Pam?
that, guys. Can you hear me now?
Okay. Yes, we can.
Can you hear me? Okay, good.
Yes.
Sorry. Um, Yeah, so I mean, problem solving in terms of identifying issues, analyzing the situations, and coming up with solutions. So I think that's important. All of these things are really important at a student or graduate level already before even entering the workplace. Then the other thing students particularly battle with, and I think is critical, is time management. And just to share a story with you, I had an intern, wasn't a law graduate, but you know, just came to me for some work experience. And the one thing that he battled with, and because it happened during COVID and we were working remotely, um, he battled with the whole getting up in the morning, and the 9 to 5 kind of setup. And so there would be frequently times where I would like try to get a hold of him and be unable to do so. And then, once things opened up a little bit, during COVID, I then insisted that he come to my office and sit and work with me. And I think he hated me for it, because it forced him to get up and show up, and things like that. But looking at him now, he currently works at a client of mine. He's a practice manager in the banking team, and I somewhat have like a proud mama moment when I look at him. So they really battle. And I mean, you don't really blame students for, unless of course they're attending lectures on campus. But if it's a case of they studying through correspondence, etc., then a lot of them battle with managing their time. But if they could put things into practice like time blocking or using other techniques, then easier whether you go into practice or follow an alternative career path, because we all know how precious our time is. So the other one is a big one for me is resilience, and the ability to adapt and adjust to new conditions, changes in the work environment. And I can tell you, Eugene spoke about earlier that the CAs rotate at law firms, and a lot of them battle with that rotation period where, you know, God forbid you had quite an easy rotation in maybe a tax team, and then your next rotation is dispute resolution, and there's all this adrenaline pumping, and you just battle to adapt. So that's, I think, very important. Um, and just to be, in legal, they always say you've got to grow thick skin to survive in this industry. And I think that's a major thing, not to take things personally, adapt, take things with a pinch of salt. Because, I say this after seeing many a candidate attorney break down in the bathroom because it's things just get so tough and unbearable. So that's a really important one for me. And you know, also leadership skills, I think, is quite a big one, because the ability to guide and motivate and inspire others doesn't come naturally to everyone. And I take my hat off to my one current intern who's doing fourth year, and praying for him to pass. But he's just somebody to be admired, because he is such a leader in terms of not waiting and having a victim mentality, going to the extent of volunteering his services to fairly large law firms. And when I heard his story of his volunteering, just to do research actually, and he's rubbed shoulders with a man that has been in this industry probably when we weren't born, and I said to him, that is something it's great to have it on your CV that you've worked so closely with him, but just the fact that you took leadership of yourself and made that opportunity happen for you, um, and yeah, I think that's a great leader. Then emotional intelligence, being or having the capacity to be aware of, control, and express one's emotions and handle interpersonal relationships judiciously and empathetically. And I think that our new generation, that's currently students and graduating, they are more in touch with emotional intelligence than some of our Gen X leaders, that just want to grind, grind, grind all the time. So you have some CAs that will say to me, "Oh, Pam, I took a mental health day today." And, you know, 25 years ago or so, would you be able to tell your boss, I was having a tough time. I took an emotional or mental health day. And I actually laughed when she said that to me. And I was like, then why'd you study law, girl? Really? Like, that's very important. But also, having spoken about communication, I think that's very important when it comes to building relationships, adding value to to yourself, actually. um, the ability to stand out from a crowd of 500 applicants is really a big ask right now. And often I say to guys, or when I interview interns and I ask them, so why do you study law? And someone spoke about this earlier. um, they really do have such a angelic reason for doing it. Like, I've heard things from, my parents went through a divorce, and I really loved the way the lawyer that dealt with the divorce also handled us, and she cared for us, etc., etc. So it's really a passionate answer. But if you think about the types of answers that our law firms are looking for, that's not going to cut it,
Mm.
you know. So really sad, but um, communication is definitely a game changer, I think. And as they go into their respective careers, um, communication also enables you to gain trust from your client and gain loyalty and just ensure your overall success, right? So to answer Sheila's question about networking as a skill, networking, Sheila, I think is one of those very important things right now. Okay. And I'm going to share a story with you that happened very recently. A client of mine sent me a CV of a lady that lives in the West Rand of Joburg. And this young lady does not have her own transport, but she took a taxi and she walked throughout Parktown, handing her CV, like a hard copy, to law firms. And my client received this and he went through it, and I got an email from him to say, this is what happened, lovely lady. Can you check if you can help her? And I interviewed her 2 weeks ago, and she is so special. She hasn't even done LLB. She's done a paralegal degree. And she's so willing to learn. And I was just shocked with her story. And I was like, why did you have to take a taxi to go and drop off your CV instead of just emailing? And she's like, Pam, people don't respond to emails. So I said to her, I don't have any opportunities at the moment. And it's not like you want to go that traditional legal path. So, especially having done a paralegal. So, what's your ideal, job that you're looking for? And she said, I really love real estate, which is what we spoke about just now. What do they really love? And I said to her, because at the back of my mind, I thought about another client who's looking for a real estate secretary. And I said to her, would you mind a conveyancing secretary position? And she was like, no. I said, okay, let's do a few things first before we even put you forward for the position. Let's redo your CV. It doesn't really read well. So I took her in, gave her an example of what a nice professional CV looks like. And then I said, on LinkedIn, and I would like to connect with another human, right? It's like going to a networking event with a paper bag over your head. So, and then I gave her a week to do that. And when I had my call with her last week, because I've now offered to mentor her, and it was again one of those really heartwarming moments, because this is how desperate she is to make a change, and open up for these opportunities. That over the weekend she took a professional photo of herself, redid her CV, redid her LinkedIn profile, and I then just went in, tweaked a few things, and I said to her, okay, I'm now going to send the CV to my client. And I've sent it. And the client was like, did she study real estate as part of her degree? And I said, yes. And she was like, okay, fine, let me look at it. So I think networking, in whatever way it happens, it's definitely absolutely important in this day and age. In fact, I was speaking to a friend of mine the other day, and he's into marketing. And I think it's very important um, for students and graduates to learn how to market themselves in a very professional manner. And the next task I've given her is to go onto LinkedIn, look at groups, start discussions or contribute to discussions, follow people, because a lot of these students don't know these things. And honestly, I think all of us that are on this call today have got so much to offer these young people. So, and the one skill I think that can definitely empower your mindset is gratitude. It's a skill that's very often underappreciated, underutilized, and like all of us believe that the power of positive thinking will always result in positive outcomes. And I think that the reality is that we are living in such cruel, unkind times and saddled with negativity. And these poor kids have become part of this vicious cycle. And there's very few people that are cheering them on and saying, you know what, just be positive, be grateful for those that cross your path, teach you the skills. I'm ever so grateful for my first bosses 25 years ago, who literally coming fresh out of university, Google had just come out a year before that, and so no access to computers, but I love my bosses. I'm still friends with them. But, to actually get a boss that sits next to you and says, Pam, click here, Pam, click there, is priceless. And I'm so blessed, and I'm so grateful to have met them and to still have them in my life. So I think every student, graduate needs someone like that. So yeah, that's me.
That's really good. Thank you so much for that, Pam. I really love that you touched on the humanity part of things. I think that's something that lacks in this profession. People are not looking beyond the CV and the qualifications. They're looking at paper and paper only. And people are dealing with real life situations, and they've got circumstances that are weighing them down. And all they really need is for someone to just open that door for them. And once that door is opened, they'll just make the most of it. So thank you so much for touching on that. And I noted that you touched on hard skills, which are challenging for graduates, as well as soft skills that seem to be problematic. And I think that's also leading to the rise of unemployment, especially with law graduates. So as Karen is going to give us the perspective of a law firm owner as well as an educator, I want you to touch on this issue that we see now in the profession, where newly admitted attorneys are opting to start their own practice. Now, Eugene and Lisa and Pragy, they have, talked about just the gap between varsity and, practicing. So with that in mind, I just want you to touch on the readiness of newly admitted attorneys. Do you think newly admitted attorneys can operate their law firms? And if so, if they can operate their law firms, why would you say so? If not, what do you think still needs to be done? Do you think the 2 years of articles is enough for somebody to start and run their own law firm?
I love your question. And I've been making notes on what everybody's had to say, because in fact, each person has said something that answers that question in a way. So I think what I'd like to do is start with my story, because I became an attorney later in life. So for my sins, I'm a qualified fashion designer. I left school, went to what was then called Natal Technicon and studied fashion design. I'm a useless fashion designer. Okay, let's just get that out there. I'm useless at it, right? And the clothing industry in South Africa, when I started back in I'm not going to tell you how long ago it was because it'll give away my age. The clothing industry in South Africa was pretty strong, but I started working for a small law firm, listen to me, for a small clothing company, and I was one of those who had to do everything. So I never actually designed a thing in my life other than a few dresses for the Durban July and things like that. Anyway, the long story short is that I hated working in the clothing industry. I hated it with a passion. And I went through personal life experiences that I came up, got divorced, was a single parent, and just was hating my life. I was retrenched 4 times. And one of those times I was unemployed for 8 months. And being a single mom and not having an income is pretty horrible. And at the age of 39, I was at a guest house in the Free State, tiny little town called Vicksburg, and I happened to meet a lady who had come to stay at the same guest house where I was staying, and her and I sat and had a cup of coffee, and she was a black woman, and she also had a small child with her of about 6 years old, and her son and my son were playing, and I happened to ask her what she does. And she said, "Oh, I'm a lawyer." And I went, "Oh, I've always wanted to be a lawyer." And she looked at me very sternly and said, "Well, why aren't you one?" I was a little bit taken aback. Well, I'm almost 40 years old. I'm a single mother. I can't afford it. It's expensive. I don't have the time. It takes so long. I made all these excuses. And then she said, "I'm going to tell you my story. And when I'm done, I want you to stop making excuses." I was like, "Okay, give it your best shot." And so now we're talking about a black single mother in South Africa, right? She was a tea girl, in an all white, all male, Afrikaans law firm in Pretoria, of all places. She put herself through UNISA, and when I met her, she was a partner at that same firm. Now, that made me stop and think, well, if that lady can do it, me with my white privilege, I can do it. And I registered and started my degree the following year, the year that I turned 40 at the end of that year, and then I started studying the next year. And it was a benefit to me that I was older when I went into law. I had many years life experience that I took with me. I came from an environment, a production environment, that you have to manage time. You have to know, your factory starts operating at 7 o'clock. You've got to be there at 7 o'clock, because if you're not, that factory's going to shut down and it's going to cost you millions. You know that you've got a deadline. If you don't produce that item by that date, you're going to get penalized 5%. These are skills that you don't learn as a lawyer. You learn doing other things. And I think, I was also brought up in a time when children were not mollycoddled, right? When we did something wrong, we got the wooden spoon. My mom would say, "Go to the kitchen and get the wooden spoon." Nowadays, you just so much as raise your voice to a child and everyone goes, "Oh, you're such a bad parent." And I think the new generation are so mollycoddled and put into cotton wool that they don't understand the reality of life. And life is hard. And life is going to throw lemons at you so fast you are not going to be able to drink enough tequila to finish the lemons. So my my experience was that, so I studied through UNISA, and I was working full-time whilst I was studying. And I started my articles whilst I was still studying. Pam spoke about your CV and the number of emails she gets, blank email with a CV, or you'll get this whole long spiel about how amazing, what an amazing benefit they'll be to your firm. And I'm like, no, you won't. They're too arrogant. They think that they're going to solve all my problems. Well, but they haven't taken the time to get to know who is Karen Botha. If you're sending me your CV, you need to know who am I and really how can you benefit me? Because you can't just say, I'm going to add so much value. At the age of 25, I'm going to add so much value to your law firm. So I think a lot of the issues that I have found, and I experienced it when I was doing my PLTs. So for those of you who are not South African, PLTs is practical legal training. It's a fairly new thing that came in whilst I was busy doing my degree. When I started my degree, it didn't exist. Then it became a thing. And it's depending on how long you do it. Mine was over 6 months, and I had to go I think twice a week. And it was in the evenings, so it was like from 4 o'clock until, I'd get home at 10 o'clock. And again, I'm a single mother. And these kids, and I call them kids because I was way above the oldest. Most of them are in their early 20s. They're fresh out of law school. They arrive late. I mean, in law, you cannot arrive late. If court starts at 9:30, it starts at 9:30. It doesn't start, excuse me, madam, when I've finished doing my nails and had my latte. No. It starts at that time. And they would arrive late, and then there would be all kinds of excuses. And I used to get so frustrated. And eventually, one lecture, I complained many times. And it was quite funny because it landed up that the people that were behaving badly all actually were clerks at the same firm. So that just says to me that firm has got a problem. And then, other than arriving late, they would be on their phones, they would be laughing and joking. I'm trying to learn. And they would be doing nothing, all this nonsense would be going on. And then one of our lecturers, if I recall correctly, it was actually the ethics lecturer, asked everyone a question. He said, what law do you want to do? So in the PLTs, you sit in this, like an auditorium, like you do at university. So, I never experienced that because I studied, through UNISA. So he points up and he points to the person right at the back at the top and says, come on, you, what law do you want to do? And there's like this deathly silence, muttering and no, I don't know. Next, what do you want to do? What do you want to do? There were nobody. By the sixth person, I was like, I'm done now. So I stuck up my hand and I said, I'm sorry, hello. Do you mind if I tell you what I want to do? Because I'm getting a bit annoyed now. And I said, I want to be a family law attorney. I want to do family law. I knew from the minute I started studying what law I wanted to do. There was no doubt in my mind. I never strayed from that. And I had a goal, and I said it then. I said, I am going to join a law firm that does family law for 5 years. And in 5 years after that, I will start my own firm. And that's exactly what I did. And that's, I think, one of the biggest issues with young people is they have a sense of entitlement. Pam, you spoke about gratitude, and I wrote down here a sense of entitlement. They're not grateful. I was so grateful for every opportunity I was given. When when I started my articles and I was introduced to counsel, I promise you, I was so humble about it because, I mean, I was older than most of them, but I didn't try and act like I knew more than them because, flipping hell, I didn't. And I knew, having studied fashion design and then got into a production environment, I knew that when I left and I moved over from one to the other, I knew nothing. Like, what you learn in a book is not what happens in practice. So another thing that Pam spoke about, how important networking is. In law, it's all about relationships. You think it's about being able to read judgments and books, and it's not. It's about relationships. How do we develop a relationship, one, with our clients, and two, with our colleagues? And it's not just colleagues in the law field. In family law, we have to have colleagues in psychology, social work, financial advisors, accountants. We have to have this whole pool of professionals that we can turn to and say, I need help with something. And one of the things that, that I think that is a skill that the current generation, because this is the most important thing in their lives, AI and Google, well, Google's dying now because of AI, but their noses are in these things all the time. They don't know how to have a conversation with another human being face to face. And that is something that is so important. When you're dealing with a colleague, remember, your clients come and go. Your colleagues are for the rest of your career. And so we might fight as colleagues, and we know we're going to give it horns. Eugene and I know we've had matters against one another. We'll give it horns. But at the end of the day, we're going to go and we're going to sit down and drink. Eugene will have wine, I'll drink coffee, and we'll have a good laugh. But relationships are so important. So that ties into the networking that Pam was talking about. The other thing that I think is, because of my life experience, it was much easier for me. And also because I started my articles whilst I was still studying, it also made it easier for me because you get so much more experience. And these kids come straight out of university. They've never, like Lisa said, they've never been in a courtroom. They've got no idea. I used to get young students who are in second or third year come to me for work experience. They'd come and spend a week with me. Now, I don't have a hugely busy practice. I'm busy enough. I love my life because I've got a wonderful work-life balance. And I would have 2 young students come at a time. And the last 2 that I had said to them, I will take you to court with me when I go, but our driver Z Ford only has a driver's seat and passenger seat, so I can only take one of you at a time. The other one will stay at the office, and I had an article clerk working for me at the time. You'll stay with Nazneen, and Nazneen will give you some homework to do. So the first day that I'm going to court, they arrive, and the one young lass is all ready, and off we go to court. Everything's fine. The next day was the next lass to take to court. Madam arrives wearing 3/4 pants, a T-shirt with a big print on front, and you know those slipper things they wear with the little fuzzy bits on the top. I was like, oh no, that's not working. Thankfully, she was the same size as me, wore the same size shoes. I went to my cupboard, I got her a shirt and a skirt and a pair of shoes, and I said, get dressed. You're not going to a party, you're going to court. And I think that is such an important thing. You don't get taught that at law school, you know. You don't get, I'll go to court and I'll see a young girl who's obviously an article clerk because she's carrying lots and lots of files, coming to do something at court, and her mini skirt is barely covering her special bits. No, I'm sorry, it's just not on. We need to respect the profession that we're going into. And if you don't respect the profession, you shouldn't be going into it. Pam, you were talking about standing out from the crowd. I've also written that down. And that is another thing. When you get CVs, you get so many. How do you stand out from the crowd? I got articles not because I got top marks, not because I put in my covering letter how wonderful I was and what I could do for you, but because on my CV, it said I was a horse rider and a riding instructor, and my principal was a horse rider. And she was like, this is with me. That's how I got my articles. That was how I happened to stand out. And it's true about the difference between email and hard copy. I had sent her, back in the day when we still had snail mail and the post office actually worked, I sat licking and typing and licking and sticking, and I sent out my CV. And Marion, my principal, she had received my CV and looked at it and stuck it in a drawer, and she was cleaning out her office and found it one day and went, oh, that's an article clerk. She rides horses. I'll hire her. So doing it in hard copy, and what Pam said about that young lady who went around and gave her CV, it's important. And again, it's networking, it's building relationships. If people see who you are, they're far more likely to offer you a role. If you arrive there in, shorts that barely cover your special bits and slippers, chances are they're going to take your CV and throw it in the bin. And it's important how you present yourself, and it starts from the moment you do your PLTs. So those kids who were making all that noise during PLTs, when I used to see them later on when they could, done their stuff and were admitted, I didn't take them seriously. I wouldn't. I can't respect you because I know how you behaved. And it's disrespectful to our profession. So I think for me, and like everybody has been saying, you need to have a passion for the law. If it's not 100, if you are not in 100% in, it's going to kill you, because it's a long course of studying. It's 4 years. I mean, I was studying and working at the same time. I used to study 4 hours every night after I put my son to bed. I used to study for 8 hours every Saturday and every Sunday. I had no life for 4 years. As an article clerk, you earn next to nothing. My friends used to phone and say, "Would you like to go out for lunch?" Like, sorry, can't afford it. I had no life. You've got to make that commitment. That is what I want to be. That's where I want to be, and why I want to be there. If you don't have that, the profession will chew you up and spit you out. And that's when you need to start thinking, well, what alternatives can I do instead of particularly doing law? Sheila, you asked me a question about whether you should go straight into having your own law firm, and I think it's a very bad idea. So many people, you're setting yourself up for failure. Running a law practice is not as easy as it looks in your books. Okay, there are overheads. You've got to be able to pay. You've got to have an accounting program. You've got to have an accountant. You've got to have an auditor. You've got to pay all legal. You've got to pay the LPC every year. You've got to do all of that stuff. And so you've got overheads that you have to know that's going to happen. You've got to have an office. You've got to have furniture. You've got to have a laptop. You've got to have a cell phone. You've got to have a cell phone contract. Before you even start, you've got to know how much money you need every month to run your firm. And young people don't have that. Then you don't have the relationships. And especially when you're younger. For me, it was much easier because I was older. People didn't look at me and go, oh, she must have just left law school. They didn't know I had only just left law school because I was already 44. So I didn't have to break through that barrier. And if you're 25, 26 years old, life experience do you have? That somebody who's 40, 50, 60 years old who's got a legal problem is going to come to you. So my advice is find a firm that does what you want to do in law. If you are passionate about insurance law, find a firm that does that. If you're passionate about IT law, find a firm that does that and latch onto them and tell them, why are you the best thing since cottage cheese for them? And spend at least 3 to 5 years at that firm. Do the hard work. Be the one who's there first. Be the one who leaves last. Do it. If you're passionate about it, you will make it happen. Get up, dress up, show up. That's my motto. I hope I answered the question.
Yes, you did. Thank you so much. I love the fact that, you stated that you started at a much older age. And that's so inspiring because I think.
Older, more mature.
Okay, more
Don't
mature.
use the word
Sorry
older.
about that. Sorry about that. A more mature age. A more mature age. I love that because I think a lot of graduates are stuck in their qualifications. It's like, okay, do I have to take a different route, or like, what can I do to make this work? And I love that, at a more mature age, you decided to do something that was totally different. And I think that's inspiring for anyone, knowing that it's not too late to start again wherever you want to start again. And also just, the question relating to newly admitted attorneys not being ready for practice. Eugene and Lisa, I'd like for you guys to add a little bit more to that because you guys are also law firm owners. So you'd have, I think something to add to that question. Eugene?
Yes, I totally agree with Karen. I don't think legal practitioners have the mental ability and the maturity to start off a legal practice unless you're a trust fund baby, and you have a lot of money to hemorrhage into a firm for you to practice in. I mean, it's not called a practice for nothing. But yeah, my advice would be is to like Karen said, you know what, stick around and pay your dues. Go through the whole process and gain some experience. Lisa mentioned previously about the ethics. I would go to court. You know what? Some of these youngsters have never been to court, but then they are expected once they started a law firm, never mind opening your own law firm, to have proper court etiquette. I mean, I've been in one of the regional courts here, local regional courts, where one of the attorneys came in and he said, "How's it?" to one of the presiding officers. Now, I mean, really, you can't go around and say, "How's it?" to a presiding officer. I mean, the presiding officer nearly had a fit. But yes, they don't know any better. So go through the ropes. And you know what? If you are stuck in a situation where you are doing your articles and find that you don't get the necessary exposure for you to have the necessary competency to open your own law firm, then change, move. You're not a damn tree. Go to some other firm that would equip you with the knowledge that you lack. Most of these big firms, you know what, they put them on a rotation, and then you spend 2 weeks here, 2 weeks there, 2 weeks in banking, 2 weeks in insurance, 2 weeks in that. You know what, you cannot learn the skills of the trade in 2 weeks, which means that once you finish with your articles, you end up with a big name company behind you that gives you your internship, but it does not relate into practice. You have not learned all the skills that you've had. My advice to the young legal practitioners would be, you know what, then go and speak to your principal and tell him, you know what, I am not I'm not learning anything. Won't you send me to an advocate for 2 weeks? Let me get some high court experience. If that firm is not doing high court litigation, ask your principal, can I not go and sit in for 2 weeks at an advocate? Or you know what, I don't do road accident funds or insurance claims. Can't you send me to one of your colleagues? Because it's much easier to phone up a colleague and say, you know what, I've got this candidate attorney, which is not as bright as the big twinkle star, but you know what, he's willing to learn. So can he not sit in with your office? I'll still pay him, but can he not sit in for 2 weeks because he needs to gain that experience? And that is what is needed.
Thank you for that,
Thank you.
Eugene. Lisa?
If you want to open your own practice, you have to at least take some sort of course in business management, how to run a business, because it is a business. Right? If you don't know what an AR is, an aging AR is, if you don't know how to send out your billing, if you don't know how to capture your billing, if you don't know how to market, if you don't know how to do website, if you don't know how to do any of those things, you're not going to get business. And so your door is going to be open for a very limited amount of time. So the practice, like running your own practice for us, we were not business owners, my husband and I first. That is something we had to learn. And once we realized, we started, getting coaches, business coaches and lawyer coaches and people who had done what we wanted to do so we could learn those aspects of it. I'm just going to say this, and it might not be popular. I think that our profession sometimes lacks compassion for people who wear the short skirts or who are on the cell phones or who don't know. Because oftentimes these 22, 3, 4-year-olds haven't had someone come to them and just say, hey, are you open to an honest conversation about how things could be different for you? Are you open to a different perspective? Because from the moment these 24-year-olds are born, they have a camera in their face. So, they are born, they are not like how we were raised. I'm only 44, right? But they are not, we cannot expect our experience to be their experience. So we also have to adapt. And I think that we don't talk about that enough. The inclination is to get frustrated because it's different. I don't tolerate disrespect. I don't think any of us on this panel tolerate disrespectful behavior. Laughing in court, all of that is nonsense. Laughing in class is not, and that's unacceptable. But when I extend compassion to a student and I say, listen, can I level with you? And I get that, sure, Lisa, sure, Professor Blasser. It opens up a whole new side of them that doesn't feel condemned, doesn't feel like I'm judging them. And it opens up hey, now we can get to the place where you can learn all these things that are going to make you an excellent lawyer, an excellent law student, so you achieve your goals. So you want to open up your own practice, know how to run a business, and then us as business owners and law firm owners and lawyers extend a little bit of kindness, because we kind of put those people, these students, in the position they're in with these phones and with this AI, and that's their norm. That's how we've taught them to grow up. In all fairness, I have a problem with, phones, my kids and all the phones and everything, but I also have to say, these are the times, and I want to be able to connect with students. And that means accepting that their version is different than mine. Their perspective is different from mine. Their character might be a little different, and just saying, hey, where can we meet, and how can we get you to your goal? So that's it. That's all I have.
I like that. I love that. Lisa Thomas, do you have any more questions for our panelists?
Yeah, everyone's been saying Lisa. I've not been saying which one.
Yeah, which one?
I want to obviously expand on what I think Karen and I think Pam spoke about, differentiating yourself. Personally, I never knew about personal branding until I started experiencing the benefits of it. So when I get those DMs, like Pragy says, I need a job, or I'm struggling to find internships and articles, and they might send me their CV, And I think I can be really snarky and I'll say, yeah, you and a million other graduates, like what makes you stand out? And I've been preaching this since I think my early days on LinkedIn when I was properly active, maybe 2 years ago, where I said, look, if you have this package, if you are a person that ab sales on the weekend, you're an adrenaline junkie, you're an attorney who loves to cook, you love pottery, that is your brand. Right? And the tendency, I think, within the profession is to kind of shelve those things because they are not very loyally, you know. And who's to say? I mean, that is what you were born with, and of course, we pick up new talents and we discover new things about ourselves. And we may be a comedian on the weekend, doing gigs on the weekend. I mean, that's very, very unlike a lawyer to do, right? But I say, what, don't deny that, don't deny yourself, don't deny parts of yourself that, like Karen said, she put horse riding in her CV or in her motivation letter, cover letter. That is, I mean, that is not the standard thing you would find in a motivation letter, but it suddenly makes me jump out at me. Wow, this person has, if anything, it tells me they have a life outside of law, which is what a lot of the students and candidates fail to acknowledge, is that life goes on and you're practicing this thing called law in the middle of that. So you continue being yourself, right? And lawyering is just a cap that you wear. And so you've got to put that out, however you choose to put that out. I think whether you now, I'm always encouraging students, even to collaborate with me and create some content. Start getting your voice out there, because even Pam is no longer with us, but she was talking about that, just get involved in discussions, comments, even if you're not going to be a full-time content creator like Sheila or myself. But let your thinking get out there. You don't know who's watching, let them start to see how you think, your opinions, right? And that's all part of your brand. All of the insights that you bring. It may not be a popular, you know, opinion, but that is part of your brand. So I think that's something that I try to do as much as I can from my end, teaching young or aspiring lawyers how to brand themselves. Because, the thing is, on our end, there aren't as many positions available after graduation. I mean, I think Karen mentioned it. They're all competing for the same small number of positions. So the demand to differentiate yourself is very high. You've got to, and I say, if the position doesn't exist, create it, right? So I think a couple of us spoke about marrying I think Lisa spoke about marrying what you're good at with being a lawyer. And I've had a couple of those moments, like full circle moments, where it's like things that I shelved for the sake of studying law, they're coming back. And I'm getting to marry now law, and like I love acting, I love drama. And now I'm going to be creating content around role playing. And I hope I don't get too excited by the acting and I forget the law side of it. But you know, there are those parts of us that we kind of deny, and then I'm always telling people, don't put it away, don't deny it, don't discount it. Find a way to marry it. Find a way to marry lawyering with being a fashion designer. And Karen, I have another colleague who studied fashion design. And I said, look, it might just come back around for you. You never know. Right? So there's all these nice, interesting things about all of us. And I think when we set ourselves on this path to study law, it's like we don't look to the right, we don't look to the left. Like Karen said, we don't have a life at all. And so we think, okay, I need to just discount myself a lot and just focus on this thing being a lawyer, and not realizing that who you are actually what ingratiates you to colleagues, right? And to even to the ones that are up and coming. I mean, the reason I probably have a lot of influence is because I'm very anti antithetical to the norm of what being a barrister is supposed to look like. Like, I'm very friendly, and people would often ask me in the early days, like, why are you so nice to us? And yeah, I had to answer that question, like, because I just want to help you, like, and I'm just a good person. Like, I'm very hard not to like. You have to be really something has to be wrong with you for you not to like me. It's like I'm a very likable person. So it presents that's the brand that I've been putting out. And the same with the other Lisa. It's like I didn't even know she was a professor until fairly recently. I mean, it's just this the kind of the aura or the presentation of herself is so ingratiating, it's so different. And that's what makes, draws people like me to her and others. So I think if we want to set them on a trajectory to say, hey, you can explore other avenues, it's they need to come to terms with themselves first. They need to come to terms with who they are, their talents, their strengths, their weaknesses, their hidden talents, things that they might even be ashamed of. Like, do that inventory and then say, okay, maybe this law thing doesn't have to be so one track, or I don't have to have such tunnel vision about law. What if I decide to go into fashion and try to work in the law because I'm a very good fashion designer, I'm a very good artist? Why don't I apply, start some kind of a consultancy for artists, or, where you sort of help them with their royalty collections or something that connects you with the rest of yourself and you still have your basis in law. So I think it's obviously a start. I think it's a better starting point to say, guys, come to terms with who you are, your branding, like what do you have to present? Someone mentioned adding value. How are you going to add value? What do you bring to the table? How is the profession going to be less colorful without you? Okay, think about that, and then slowly start to bring more and more of yourself to your job. And yes, be willing to be against the norm. I think we've sort of, the normative standard has become, the stereotype, serious, frumpy, you know, up nose in the air kind of person, and it's just no one is like that. And if we're going to conform to that stereotype, then of course that's why we have so much of duality in the profession and so much of hypocrisy, because we feel that we have to put on a certain act, put on our costume, get our gown on, our wig on, and then, not surprisingly, we are a different person outside the courtroom. But what if that person could come into the courtroom? We don't have to be these two people. We have to be one. So I think that's a good starting point, is to get people to differentiate, individuate yourself from the sea of graduates. And if you send me a CV, or Pam gets a CV, or Pragy, and they say, I'm looking for a job, do you have, and I'll be like, yeah, you and a million other graduates in your position, why would I want to employ you? And that's often a question they can't answer in a very meaningful way. And of course, we all know about the cover letters. I call them election promises. I'd be like, nah, you're not self-motivated. You're not goal-orientated. Like, give the adjectives a break. Like, you've got all these fanciful descriptions. But if I put you in a week-long interview and I tested your goal orientation, your self-motivation, whatever else you're claiming that you are, would you actually pass? And I dare say a lot of them will not. But they want to put themselves forward. They want to promise you a lot about them. And the sad part is, a lot of it is just, just to get in. And once they get in, they don't demonstrate or they fall short of their own standards. So I think we passed that point where personal branding is fancy or for influencers. I think in a professional sense, there's just too many like us. We're all punching for the same things. We're all competing for the same positions, and so we must individuate. We must differentiate, and especially if you're going to be a business owner. As Lisa said, law is a business, and I like one of my mantras is like law is a business. So if you are going to open a law firm, you have to be a business owner. You're going to be a financial manager. You're going to be an HR person. All of that. And so if we know how to individuate, then if we want to start a law firm, if that's a viable career path after doing time in the field, then of course that personal brand will carry over into the firm. That people will want to give your firm work or brief your firm because we just love Karen, we just love Lisa, we just love Sheila. Like they do it because of you. You are the buy-in. So I think obviously this is a initial discussion, but I think I for one will be pushing that thing that yes, the system is what it is. Yes, we will lobby. Yes, we will address, but the responsibility, like as Pam says, the responsibility is with us. So we've got to be those starters. We've got to be the fire, be your own fire lighter, be your own fire starter, and stop waiting for someone to, for trust fund money or someone to throw a position your way or somebody to throw a promotion your way. It doesn't, if you do that, it's putting yourself at the mercy of a system, and you are far too valuable for that. You have to take responsibility. You got to put yourself out there and say, hey, if I'm not there, the profession is going to be great. Right? You gotta put yourself and say, I'm going to add value. The type of lawyering I'm going to do is going to be something they haven't seen before, and it's not going to have very little to do with my mental capacity, but a lot to do with how I present, how I project, how I interact, how I communicate, how I deal with disagreements amongst colleagues, how I deal with a presiding officer having a different opinion and challenging me, emotional intelligence, all those things. And so, of course, we're going to be talking more and I guess supporting each other in our various parts of the world and the country, because my whole aim for this was, we have a global issue. We have to help these children. I think when you reach a certain age, even though I'm going to hit 40 in a couple of months, but you start saying children. I noticed that you start calling them children, but you're not that much older than them. But I think, we have to help them. And we got to help them. We've got to, like Lise said, you got to level with them sometimes and say, you actually, maybe you're contributing to the problem. Maybe you have a blind spot, got blinkers on, like, you didn't have the kind of upbringing, your value system is corrupted. Maybe for you, lying is normal. So we've got to help them. We've got to help them. And of course, at the same time, as all good parents, we push them out there to fend for themselves at a certain point and also make the mistakes and learn from it. So I think that's my benediction. Sorry, I'm a pastor's kid. I got all the church terminology. That's my I think my contribution at the end. And I don't know if Sheila, you want to add anything?
Just to wrap up what you have said, about if what you want does not exist, you must create it. And I think that's something that rings true for, all of us. Like Pragy also has, with legal tech, that's something that did not exist a couple of years ago, and now it's thriving. And you've got me. I am an attorney. I'm also a content creator. So I have married the two, and it has become so lucrative. It's something that I did not even see coming while I was studying. I could never imagine that I would be a content creator. I would be a writer. I would never have thought, because at that point I just thought attorney or nothing. I'm going to be in court all the time. And I was miserable in practice. I was so miserable. I could not wait to get out. And when I got out, it was so difficult because I thought I was a failure. I thought, what else is there to do? I mean, I've been trained to do this. So if I can't do it, that means that I have failed with my degree. So just going out there and finding your niche and finding your little spot in the profession will really just open up doors for you. And if you can't find anything that resonates with you, I think it's best if you create it. Things like content creation, things like legal technology, they are fairly new. So these are virgin dimensions that have never been uncovered. So I really encourage all of you who are listening to really introspect and see what it is that you like, and try to marry that with the law. You don't have to start a completely new qualification if you don't want to. So just look within yourself and see how you can just carve out your own path. It doesn't have to be identical to mine or Pragy's or Pam's. You can carve out your own path, and something that resonates and fulfills you, because you are an individual and you cannot have a path that's identical to Lisa's or to Eugene's. We are not robots. We are human beings. We love different things and we are different. So embrace that, and don't gaslight yourself. Don't, hold yourself back by thinking that this is one way that my degree is supposed to go or my career is supposed to go. So that's what I have to say to everybody who is listening, to just introspect, to look within yourself and don't limit yourself. One question that I asked myself when I was rock bottom, I was crying all the time because I thought, oh, I failed in life. What is there to do? I asked myself, I said, if there were no barriers to anything, what would you like to do with your life? And it was with that ideas started flowing into my head, and I realized that, I like certain things. And I found a way to marry them with, the skills that I've acquired through, being in practice and just having a law degree. So just look within yourself and be patient with yourself. Practice gratitude. And also be grateful to yourself. You have a law degree. That is something to be proud of. Don't always look on the negative side, like, oh, I don't have a job, I don't know what to do. But rather look on the positive as well, that, you do have a law degree. You are smart enough to get through the LLB. So there is something going on in your life. So that's just, how I wanted to wrap this up. So Lisa, do you have anything else to add?
Well, I know this is going to be the first of many, many discussions. That I'm so grateful that most of you guys were here. I'm sure the others will come in good, when we have further discussion. So thank you to my international guests. Thanks, Liz. Thanks, Pragy. Pam, thank you so much. Pam and I that should have some collaborations going very soon, hopefully, Pam. Karen, I know Karen's on my side. Eugene, with the mediation side of things, and ADR, it's going good. So thank you so much, everyone, for contributing, and we'll probably reconvene. I really like the energy and the brains trust vibe that we have here, and I think all of us, bring very nuanced perspectives, and we are going to help the children, right, in our corners of the world, and of course, lending our hands to the effort that each other, the other one is doing around the world. So thank you so much, everyone. And thank you to those that have watched the video when it's been uploaded. And this will be one of many discussions to come. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Lisa.
Thank you,
Good night, all.
Lisa. Bye,
Thank you, Lisa.
everyone.
Thank
Thank
you,
you.
Lisa. Bye, everybody. Nice meeting
Thanks,
you all.
guys.
Bye,
Bye,
everyone.
everyone.
Nice to meet you
Bye.
all.
Bye.
Same here.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.